You've written a book called Good Reasonable People. And man, sometimes it seems like there are not that many good, reasonable people on the interwebs, Keith. Al Gore's internet is not full of good, reasonable people. But why is that?
Well, the title of the book isn't claiming that everybody's good and reasonable people. Let me put that out there right at the beginning. We're not claiming that everyone's good and reasonable, but somehow in our own eyes, we always insist on seeing ourselves as good and reasonable people.
In many of our minds, it is a zero-sum game. In order for me to be good and reasonable, you must be evil and unreasonable. Is that what's happening in people's minds?
That is a lot of times what's happening. And the most painful part of that was that I found myself arguing with my own family members about political issues and having those same emotions, thinking, how can you be so ignorant? How can you be so stupid? How can you be so evil? And these are people who I know and love. And I know in my calmer moments that they're not stupid and they're not evil. And so how is it that the groups that politics puts us in makes us come out swinging in a way that we feel that even people who we know and love and we know are good, decent people, they seem to us in that moment like they must be stupid or evil. That conflict is really compelling. And I think that's what so many of us want to find a way out of.
It's a conflict in our own minds many times, and not even necessarily a verbal confrontation between me and somebody else, right?
That's right. And part of it comes from the fact that we're drawing on these group identities that make us who we are, that are really connected to our sense of self, identities like race, like gender, like being an American. And somehow we've gotten ourselves into this situation in which those identities are lined up with our political identities, being a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal or a conservative. And the problem with those identities lining up is that it's a two-party system, and that means it's a zero-sum game.
You know, it occurs to me that the idea of widespread democracy is relatively young in human history. And humans have not had the opportunity to be able to sort themselves into political ideologies in many ways in the past. Maybe you did have a different idea than your neighbor, but tribalism was such that you needed each other for protection to survive until tomorrow. People 500 years ago didn't have the opportunity to think about themselves in terms of a political ideology. This is kind of new to humans in general.
Yeah, and most of us don't have very consistent opinions about policies and issues at all. If you look at how people respond from 1 month to the next, if you survey them multiple times, they're incredibly inconsistent, even with their own past opinions.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we know that people are not at all principled when it comes to these types of topics is studies from places like Yale that show if an idea is presented as being from your group, then you like it. And if the exact same idea is presented as being from the other group, then it's a bad idea. I don't like it. Those people are trying to ruin the country. It's the same idea. Okay. It just shows that our allegiance to our group that we view ourselves a part of, whatever that is actually what is motivating us and not our principles.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we can see it as plain as day. We can predict basically before somebody is born, if we only know what racial group that they're about to be born into that family and what their geography is, where they live in the country, which of those moral foundations they're going to find compelling.
People are sometimes shocked to learn that demographers can predict with fairly high accuracy who they are likely to vote for based on their zip code. We want to view ourselves as thoughtful, good, reasonable people. And a good, reasonable person would not be influenced by zip code, Keith.
The way you put it is just right. You know, people care about a lot of issues, and they sincerely do. And first of all, our political debates usually stop right there. I say, I care about this issue. Here's what I think about it. And somebody else says, no, you're wrong. Here's some facts that'll prove you wrong. And we try to just wrestle them into submission with the force of our facts and logic. But the more interesting question is, why do you care so much about this issue?
Why do people when presented with facts, just reject the facts outright. If somebody's like, well, the moon is made of green cheese, and you present them with a litany of facts about how no, the moon is actually made of rock, it will not matter. It will not matter. In fact, the outcome of that conversation is Sharon is an idiot, right? Why are we like this?
I think what's going on is that the two people in that conversation are playing two different games. You're trying to play the reason and argument game with somebody who's actually playing I'm a good person game. One person is defending their sense of identity, their sense that they're a valuable person. If you say that I'm wrong about this, then it's not like, you gave me directions and I didn't know the way to the movie theater, but you're saying I'm wrong about something that's important to who I am. And if I'm wrong about it, I'm probably wrong about lots of other things. And the people who I believe, who I got this information from, now I have to start doubting them. It's easier to just say, you don't know what you're talking about, Sharon, and let the facts roll off your back. I think we have to realize that whenever we're defending our sense that we're a good person, no feats of logical inconsistency are out of bounds.
Yeah, because listening to understand doesn't obligate you to agree with the person. The goal is not to have your mind changed and come to see that the moon is in fact made of green cheese, but understanding why it's important for them to think that. That actually is super useful information. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you can do with that. If nothing else, it just helps you understand somebody you love better.